Name of the book: Decode, the Wake Up X Career Blueprint Version 1. Narrator by Artificial Intelligence. Voice name: Sophia. Starting from zero experience to executive thinking. No degree required. You don't need a degree, a connection, or a lucky break. You need the map. This is the exact path from complete beginner to executive level thinking. The Wake Up X framework. Entry, fit, breadth, differentiation, ownership, executive, author, Efrain L. Salazar. Host, Wake Up X Podcast. Founder and chairman, the Wake Up X Solutions, Isaka Sacramento Board. Mission is securing tomorrow, empowering today. Visit us and be a guest at wakeupxpodcast.com. Before we start, what this is and isn't. This library is educational content built from lived experience, publicly available research, and the stories of Wake Up X podcast guests. It reflects one person's path and judgment, not universal rules. It is not professional legal, financial, tax, or accounting advice, and it is not a guarantee of employment, income, or certification outcomes. Salary figures, growth statistics, and industry data are cited from named public sources at the time of writing and can change. Verify anything time-sensitive before acting on it. Lab instructions, scripts, and technical configurations are for learning in a personal or isolated lab environment. Test and verify before applying anything to a production system or a work environment. Tool, vendor, and certification names belong to their respective owners and are referenced for education only. For anything involving business formation, contracts, taxes, or employment law, talk to a licensed professional in your jurisdiction. This library will point you toward the right questions to ask. It can't replace the person qualified to answer them for your specific situation. Share freely. You're encouraged to share this library freely in full with attribution. Please don't sell it. The Wake Up X Movement. What is Wake Up X and who is Efrain L. Salazar, an advocate, community builder? I host a podcast. I'm a partner with Isaka Sacramento. I've built a community for people trying to break into this field the way I did, with no map and no connections. What I haven't done yet is stand on a big conference stage, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. This library, the podcast, and the community are the real record. The stages are next, and when that happens, this page gets updated with the real photos, not before. Where to find the real record? The podcast, wakeupxpodcast.com. The community, wakeupxpodcast.com/voices. Connect directly, linkedin.com/in/Efrain Salazar. As seen it. More from the field. Real moments with the Isaka Sacramento community at the Reignite Conference, the rooms where this movement actually happens. Isaka Sacramento Reignite Conference. Before you start. Why I'm showing you any of this. Every photo and story in this library exists for one reason. Not to prove I'm special, but to prove the opposite. I didn't have a blueprint when I started. No mentor handed me a plan, no degree opened a door, no connection got me in early. I built the plan because I needed one and it didn't exist yet. So when you see a storefront, a conference badge, or a shirt with a brand on it, don't read it as, he had something you don't. Read it as evidence, an unfinished feeling path, worked over years, one unglamorous rep at a time, actually adds up to something. That's the only claim this library makes on my behalf. Everything else in it is for you. Your first 90 days, your first lab, your first post, your first team. The only rule that matters. If a framework in this library came from somewhere else, sales, marketing, leadership, that's on purpose. Take it, remix it, make it yours. This was never about copying me. It's about you not having to start from zero the way I did. Networking and GRC foundations. 2 pieces of language every technical career eventually needs, the 7 layers that all networking builds on, and the standards that turn security work into something the business side can trust. The OSI model, all 7 layers. 7. Application, HTTP, DNS. 6. Presentation, TLS, encoding. 5. Sessions. 4. Transport, TCP, UDP. 3. Network, IP, routing. 2. Data link, MAC, switching. 1. Physical, cables, Wi-Fi. All people seem to need data processing. The classic memory trick, bottom to top. GRC, standards at a glance. PCIDSS 4.0.1, protecting cardholder/payment data. HIPAA, U.S. healthcare data privacy and security. GDPR, EU, personal data privacy rights. SOC 2, service provider trust and controls. ISO/IEC 27001:2022, information security management. ISMS. NIST CSF 2.0, govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. CIS controls, version 8.1, prioritized, practical security baseline. One diagram to build toward. A realistic segmented home lab, the kind you can defend in an interview. Start with one mini PC and grow into it. Every track in this book's home lab curriculum maps to a box below. More acronyms and a resume bullet bank. A few more terms worth knowing cold, plus a formula and stealable bullets for turning your lab work into something a resume can carry. Extended glossary. A PT, Advanced Persistent Threat. CA, Certificate Authority. CIA Triad. Confidentiality, integrity, availability. CVE. Common vulnerabilities and exposures. DFIR. Digital forensics and incident response. EDR/XDR. Endpoint/extended detection and response. IAM. Identity and access management. IDS/IPS. Intrusion detection/prevention. MFA. Multi-factor authentication. NAT. Network address translation. OSI. Open systems interconnection. PKI. Public key infrastructure. RBAC. Role-based access control. SOCK. Security Operations Center. SSO. Single sign-on. VPN. Virtual Private Network. ZTNA. Zero Trust Network Access. POLP. Principle of Least Privilege. Resume bullet bank, steal and tailor. Formula, action verb, plus what you built/the tool, plus measurable result or business value. Deployed a Wazoo SIAM across a 3-host lab, alerting on brute force logins in under 10 seconds. Built a segmented network, 3 VLANs, firewall, reverse proxy, isolating a SOC from enterprise services. Stood up Active Directory with group policy and a certificate authority for 50+ simulated users. Automated a recurring task with Python/PowerShell, cutting a 30-minute job to under 2 minutes. Where should you start? Click a level below to jump straight to the part of this blueprint built for you right now. Entry level. Never worked in tech or cybersecurity yet, or still finding your footing in your first year? Start at level 1, the basics of breaking in. Mid-level. You're in a role already and ready to add the skills that make you rare, not just qualified. Start at level 4, the multiplier skills. Executive level. Already leading or aiming for it and want a repeatable way to decide and lead under pressure. Start at level 6. Think like an executive. Prefer to read start to finish? Just turn the page. The blueprint is built as a complete path either way. Keep going. This blueprint pulls directly from conversations with real cybersecurity and tech leaders on the Wake Up X podcast. If you want the full, unedited version of any story referenced here. Subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/@efren.wakeupx. Listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Everything else, wakeupxpodcast.com. Why this blueprint exists. You don't need a degree. You don't need connections. You don't need a lucky break. You need the map, and almost nobody hands it to beginners for free. This is that map. the numbers behind the opportunity. Before any advice, here's the business case for this field in real numbers from primary sources, not hype. The opportunity in numbers. The demand is real, the pay is real, and almost half of the people doing this job started somewhere else. Sources: ISC2 Cybersecurity, Workforce Study 2024, U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. ISASA, State of Cybersecurity 2025. The opportunity in numbers. Cybersecurity's real gap has shifted from headcount to skills. ISC2's 2025 study found 95% of teams face a skills gap, up from 44% in 2024, against a global workforce of about 5.5 million. Building real skills matters more than chasing an empty seat. 29% projected growth for information security analysts between 2024 and 2034, per the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, versus roughly 4% average across all occupations. That's about 7 times the typical rate. As $124,910 median pay for information security analysts, US BLS 2024 data. 46% of current cybersecurity professionals came from non-security roles first. ISASA 2025. Nearly half of this industry is career changers. You are not late, and you are not an outsider. Growing 7 times faster than the average job. Source: U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, Occupational Outlook Handbook. Growing 7 times faster than the average job. One more number worth sitting with. The World Economic Forum found only 14% of organizations say they have the skilled people they need. The demand is not theoretical. The gap is structural, and it's the reason a blueprint like this matters more than another certification ad. A path, not a pep talk. Most career advice in tech and cybersecurity comes from one of 2 places: someone who broke in 20 years ago and forgot how confusing it actually is, or someone selling a certification course. This is neither. I'm Efren L. Salazar, founder and host of the Wake Up X Solutions, a weekly business, cybersecurity, and AI podcast based in Sacramento, California. Every episode is an honest, unscripted conversation with someone who made it into tech, from newcomers to founders to security leaders, asking them exactly how they did it. This blueprint is what happens when you take all of those conversations and compress them into one usable map. I worked my way up from entry-level jobs into technology without a degree, without early access to the industry, and without anyone handing me the path in advance. So this is the map I didn't get. There's a full chapter on my own story later, not because it's the point, but because you deserve to know the advice here was actually earned, not borrowed. The mission behind this blueprint. Wake Up X is a movement, not just a podcast. The whole reason it exists is simple. Most people never get to meet the person who's one step ahead of them. That's the gap. Not talent, not intelligence, not work ethic. Access. Somebody who already made the jump you're trying to make, willing to tell you honestly how they did it. So the promise of this blueprint is the same as the promise of the show. Build the connections you were never given. You do not need connections to belong in this field. You build them. Real advice? Zero gatekeeping? Nothing here is held back for a paid tier. Built for every stage of the climb, entry level to executive to founder. Closing the gap, one story at a time. Everything in here is tested against 2 things: what actually worked for the guests on the show and what actually worked in the work I've done and the teams I've led. Where I reference a guest's story, you can go hear the full unscripted conversation. This document is the blueprint. The podcast is the library behind it. Nothing here is original, and that's the point. Almost every idea in this blueprint has been said before, by someone else, somewhere else. The 4 beliefs in Part 2, the sales conversation framework, the discipline of documenting your work, none of it was invented in a vacuum. What made it useful wasn't the invention. It was the remix. Cybersecurity and IT are unusually isolated fields. The work rewards people who can sit alone with a problem, and that same instinct often keeps people away from sales, communication, marketing, and business thinking, skills that belong to a completely different world. I noticed that gap early, a field full of sharp technical minds who'd never been taught how to talk about their own value. So I took what already worked in sales, marketing, and leadership and bridged it into cybersecurity and IT on purpose because nobody else was doing it for this specific audience. You should do the same thing with everything in this blueprint. Don't just copy it. Take the frameworks, the tactics, the mindset, and bend them into your own shape. Every influencer, author, and mentor worth listening to is doing exactly that, passing along the same core truths filtered through their own experience. That remix is where your own voice actually comes from. How to use this blueprint. Read it in order the first time. It's built as a path: basics, then fit, then breadth, then differentiation, then business sense, then leadership, then a system to keep yourself honest about progress. Come back to individual sections once you're actually in a role and need the next level. The career value stack. Before the 6 levels, here's the underlying shape of what you're actually building. Every level in this blueprint adds one more layer to a stack, and each layer only holds weight because of the one underneath it. Curiosity is the foundation. It's the willingness to poke at something you don't understand yet. Technology sits on top of curiosity. It's the actual technical skill, whichever lane you land in. Communication sits on top of technology. Skill nobody can understand or trust is skill that stays invisible. Business and sales sits on top of communication. Once people understand you, the next question is whether what you do connects to something they actually value. Leadership is the ceiling, and it's not a title. It's what happens when the other 4 layers are strong enough that people start asking you to lead them. The career value stack. Each layer stands on the one below it. Curiosity is the foundation. Leadership is the ceiling. Skipping a layer doesn't make you faster. It makes the stack wobble. A lot of technically brilliant people get stuck for years because they built technology skill on a thin curiosity base, or leadership ambition on a thin communication base. This blueprint is organized to build the stack in order, on purpose. Let's start with the whole map. O1. Part 1. The path, start to finish. 6 levels, 1 map. Before the details, see the whole shape of where this is going. Every level builds on the one before it. Skipping a level doesn't speed you up. It just means you'll have to double back later. Level 1. Entry. You understand the basic landscape of tech and cybersecurity well enough to know what you don't yet know. Level 2. Fit. You know which lane actually matches how you think, not just which job posting sounded good. Level 3. Breadth. You've cross-trained enough adjacent fundamentals that you're never the person who says, "That's not my area." Level 4. Differentiation. You've added the sales, communication, and business translation skills that make a specialist rare instead of replaceable. Level 5. Ownership. You understand how business actually works, budgets, contracts, risk, well enough to make decisions that hold up. Level 6. Executive thinking. You can lead, decide, and communicate at the level of the room you want to be in before you have the title that says you belong there. This isn't a beginner's book. Every level in this map applies whether you haven't started yet, you're 5 years into a technical role, or you're already leading a team and trying to think like the executives above you. Read the levels that match where you are, then keep the rest as the map for where you're headed. The Wake Up. X 6-level path. Every level builds on the one before it. Skipping one just means doubling back later. The Wake Up X 6-level path. Try this on for size. 2 people start the same week in IT support. One spends 2 years only learning ticket resolution shortcuts. The other spends the same 2 years also learning basic networking, watching how their manager makes decisions, and practicing explaining technical problems in plain language to non-technical coworkers. Same job, same time. Only one of them is actually climbing the 6 levels. Reflect before you move on. Which of the 6 levels are you actually operating at right now? Honestly, not where you wish you were? What's the one level you've been skipping past without realizing it? 2. Part 2. The mindset. The 4 beliefs underneath every level. Frameworks and certifications matter, but none of them stick without the mindset underneath them. These 4 beliefs show up in some form in almost every guest conversation on the show, regardless of their lane or level. 1. Create your own opportunity. If nobody will give you a chance, build something that makes them notice. A home lab, a project, a volunteer role, a small business. Proof beats permission. Waiting for someone to open a door is a strategy with a very long, very uncertain timeline. Building something real, even small, gives you a door you can open yourself, and it's usually the thing that makes the official doors open faster too. 2. Consistency beats intensity. 1 hour a day for a year outperforms a heroic weekend you never repeat. This is the least exciting belief on this list and the most reliable one. Nobody burns out from an hour a day. People burn out from trying to cram a year of growth into a single unsustainable sprint and then quietly quit when the sprint ends. 3. Your network is your net worth. Most doors open because of a person, not a posting. Job boards are where opportunities go to get buried under 300 other applicants. A real relationship, even a thin one, skips the line almost every time. This belief gets its own full framework later in this book, The Connection Flywheel, because it's too important to leave as a one-line slogan. 4. Learn in public. Share what you're studying. It attracts mentors and opportunities before you feel ready. Nobody feels ready. The people who look confident online are just the ones who posted anyway. If nobody wants to give me the opportunity, I am going to make my own opportunity. Efrain L. Salazar, host, Wake Up X. Books that shape this mindset. Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins, on building tolerance for discomfort as a trainable skill, not a personality trait. Atomic Habits, James Clear, on why consistency compounds and intensity doesn't. The 10X Rule, Grant Cardone, on setting targets big enough that create your own opportunity, stops being a suggestion and starts being the only option. Ego is the Enemy, Ryan Holiday, on staying teachable once you've made some progress. 2 people apply to the same 50 jobs over 3 months. One waits by the inbox, the other spends that same window building a small home lab project, posting about it twice a week, and messaging 3 people a week who work in the field. By month 3, the second person has had 11 real conversations and 2 referrals. The first person has had 4 rejection emails and a lot of silence. Same 50 applications, different mindset entirely. Which of the 4 beliefs do you already live by, and which one do you avoid? What's one thing you could learn in public this week, even in a small way? 03. Part 3. Where this blueprint came from. 1 chapter on my path, then back to yours. I'm including this chapter because I want you to know exactly what starting from nothing looked like for me. Not so you feel anything about me, but so you trust that the rest of this book was earned the hard way and actually works. I grew up in a farm-working immigrant family. Money and resources were both tight. Teachers placed me in special education classes and for years told me directly that I couldn't learn. I didn't speak English as a first language and didn't really pick it up until around 16. I got my high school diploma as an adult, almost 30 years old. Looking back, most of what I actually did in those years was social engineer and reverse engineer my own life. Nobody handed me a manual for how school worked, how English worked, or how a technology career worked, so I did to my own circumstances what a good analyst does to an unfamiliar system. Watch closely, find the pattern, take it apart, and rebuild it well enough to use it. That instinct, treat the thing you don't understand as solvable instead of as a verdict on you, is the actual origin of every framework in this book. It didn't start as a business method. It started as survival and only later became a system I could teach. One teacher changed the trajectory before any of that got resolved. In 6th grade, Miss England stayed after class on her own time and taught me fundamentals, letters, sounds, reading, one-on-one. She's the reason I believe the mentorship model behind Wake Up X actually works. One person, willing to give a little extra time, can change the entire shape of someone's future. At 13, my family received a donated computer, an early 1990s Windows PC with no working mouse. I learned to run the whole thing from the keyboard alone. That, not a class or a certification, was the actual start of my technology career. From there, I started fixing computers and phones for anyone who'd let me, despite the language barrier. Around that same time, I started volunteering with an organization called Computers for Kids. The advertised deal was simple. Put in the hours, walk away with a free computer. I didn't care about the computer. I wanted to learn how the whole thing worked, so I stayed long after the incentive stopped mattering to me. I started at the bottom of that, essentially, help desk work, sitting with people and walking them through the basics of a computer they'd never really used. My cousin was right there with me through a lot of it. But the longer I stayed, the more I noticed I wasn't just interested in the fix in front of me. I wanted to know how the whole operation ran underneath it, how people got signed up, how the workflow moved, what was slow, what nobody had gotten around to improving yet. Not because I thought I knew better than anyone there, but because I couldn't turn that question off. Eventually, that curiosity moved me from help desk into a supervisor role, running more of the administrative side. I traced that instinct straight back to my parents. They came into this country as farm workers with no money, no housing lined up, and no English, and they still built a life and spent whatever they had left over helping everyone around them, family and strangers both, sometimes getting taken advantage of for exactly that generosity. Watching that removed any excuse I could ever make for myself. If they could do that with nothing, I had no right to sit on what little I did have. That's the real root of why I care more about lifting the people around me than about being the smartest person in a room, and years later, building Wake Up X felt less like starting something new and more like continuing something they'd already taught me. To Computers for Kids, thank you for the door you opened for a kid who just wanted to understand how things worked. That opportunity is still paying forward today. That repair work turned into a real business. I met my eventual co-founder through a chance referral. A stranger's cousin brought me a broken computer, and we built a cell phone repair company together. I ran the technical side. He ran sales. It worked because we were opposites, not mirrors, a lesson that shows up again in part 9 of this book. Along the way, I failed more times than I can count, got taken advantage of at least once badly enough to push me toward governance and compliance work, and eventually built the Wake Up X solutions out of everything that path taught me. One book reframed all of it for me, The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. It took the isolation, the language barrier, and the being told I couldn't learn and turned all of it from something I was hiding into fuel. That's really the point of telling you any of this. Not the specific details of my story, but the proof that the beliefs and frameworks in this book were built under real pressure, not in a classroom. Belonging nowhere and choosing to uplift anyway. One job during that same stretch was at a Mexican restaurant. I'm Mexican-American, first generation, and I figured that would count for something there. Instead, coworkers who were Mexican themselves made me feel like I didn't belong. I was told more than once, "You're not important enough, and even if you think you're better than us, you're never more and above than us. We're the real traditional Mexicans, the hard workers. You're not." I didn't have a comeback for that in the moment, and I didn't go looking for one. What I told myself instead was, maybe I don't have the same potential they think they have, but I have something different. Dedication. And I'm willing to learn and extend my knowledge. I used it as motivation to move forward, and faster, not to prove anyone wrong to their face. I never let them see it land. Part of that was understanding even then that this kind of thing was going to keep happening in different rooms for the rest of my life. Part of it was already knowing it wasn't going to be the thing that decided my future. These obstacles are always going to happen. They don't define what comes after them. Growing up, I never fully fit the American side or the Mexican side either. I've noticed the same pattern more than once since in Latino and Mexican spaces I've worked in, a tendency to push each other down to look better by comparison instead of pulling each other up. Sitting outside both identities gave me a strange kind of clarity about it. I decided a long time ago that if almost everyone around me was willing to belittle, and almost nobody was willing to uplift, that gap was exactly where I could make a difference. Wake Up X, the mentoring, Computers for Kids before it, all of it comes out of that same decision. Be the uplift I didn't get. The library that rebuilt my thinking. Resilience and mindset. Can't hurt me, you are a badass. Unfuck yourself. The 5-second rule. Ego is the enemy. Mind hacking, on fire. The power of one more. Habits and mastery. Atomic habits. The power of habit. So good they can't ignore you. Sales and motivation. The 10X rule. Sell or be sold. Be obsessed or be average. The closer's survival guide. How to get and stay motivated. All Grant Cardone. Marketing. This is marketing. Magnetic marketing. Traffic secrets. .com secrets. Influence. Leadership. Extreme ownership. Leadership strategy and tactics. Dare to lead. The score. Takes care of itself. The 7 habits of highly effective people. Good to great. Traction. The advantage. A higher loyalty. Money and finance. Rich dad. Poor dad. The psychology of money. The art of spending money. The millionaire next door. The millionaire fast lane. Think and Grow Rich, The Total Money Makeover. Communication and negotiation. Never split the difference. How to win friends and influence people. How to talk to anyone. Strategy and influence. The Art of War. 48 Laws of Power. Thinking Fast and Slow. Algorithms to Live By. The One Technical Crossover. Social engineering, because the human layer is the one most technical people ignore. Almost none of these are cybersecurity books. That's on purpose. The technical material is everywhere. This list is the part almost nobody in this field reads, and it's exactly the gap this blueprint exists to close. I still run all of it at once, a full-time role as an IT operations and solution engineer, the Wake Up X Solutions, and a partnership with Isaka Sacramento, because the mission doesn't pause for a schedule. If a chapter like this one reads as tidy, understand it isn't. It's early mornings, recorded conversations edited between meetings, and treating the parts of the week that look like networking, mentoring, and community building as real work, not a hobby squeezed in around a job. If you're reading this, Miss England, thank you for not giving up when everyone else already had. Everything after this page exists because of that one decision. If any part of my path sounds like yours, the rest of this book is what I built to make your version faster than mine was. What's the one thing you'd need to believe about yourself to start, even without a clear path yet? Who is your version of Miss England, someone who gave you a chance when they didn't have to? Oh, 4. Part 4. Level 1. The Basics of Breaking In. What cybersecurity actually means. If you're starting from zero, here's the confusion almost everyone runs into. Tech, IT, and cybersecurity aren't one field. They're a cluster of related but distinct disciplines, and most job postings don't explain the difference. IT keeps systems running. Help desk, support, networking, systems administration. Cybersecurity protects those systems and splits further into offense, finding weaknesses before attackers do. Defense, monitoring and responding to threats, and governance, making sure the organization follows the rules it's supposed to follow. Cloud and DevOps build and run the infrastructure everything else sits on. GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, is the bridge between the technical work and the legal, regulatory, and business side of the organization. Nobody hands you this map on day one. Most people, guests on the show included, spend their first year or two figuring it out by trial and error. You don't have to. 2 lanes people underestimate: cloud and GRC. Most beginners default toward help desk or offensive security because those are the most visible entry points online. 2 other lanes deserve just as much attention. Cloud is where almost everything is moving. AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud fundamentals are now relevant to nearly every IT and security role, not just dedicated cloud engineers. Even a basic understanding of how cloud environments are structured and secured makes you noticeably more employable. GRC is where the business and technical worlds actually meet. It's less flashy than offensive security, but it's one of the fastest growing lanes, and it rewards exactly the communication and business skills this blueprint spends so much time on. If you're naturally more comfortable in conversations than in a terminal, don't overlook this lane just because it's quieter online. A career changer with no technical background assumes cybersecurity only means hacking and nearly gives up before starting because that path feels impossibly far away. A short conversation with a GRC professional reframes it entirely. Her background in compliance and policy work from an unrelated industry was already 90% of the skill set GRC roles actually need. She was already qualified for a lane she didn't know existed. Your first 90 days, concretely. Weeks 1 to 4, learn the landscape above. Pick one free resource, try HackMe, a CompTIA study guide, a YouTube fundamentals series, and go through it fully before starting a second one. Weeks 5 to 8, build a home lab. A single virtual machine you break and fix yourself teaches more than a month of passive video watching. Weeks 9 to 12, start showing your work publicly. A LinkedIn post about what you learned, a small write-up, a project on GitHub. This is what starts conversations with people already in the field. Your first 90 days. Learn the landscape. Weeks 1 to 4. Pick one resource. Go through it fully. Build a home lab. Weeks 5 to 8. One VM you break and fix yourself. Show your work. Weeks 9 to 12. Post it. Write it up. Start conversations. Your first 90 days. Entry points that actually work. Help desk and technical support roles, still one of the most reliable ways into IT with no prior experience. Internal transfers, moving from a non-technical role into IT within the same company using the trust you've already built. Volunteer or nonprofit IT work, real experience without needing a paid role first. A home lab plus a documented project, proof of skill when you don't yet have a job title to point to. Build a real home lab. You don't need to buy hardware to start. The standard current path is install a free virtualization platform, run more than one operating system on the same machine, and break things on purpose so you learn how to fix them. Virtualization platforms, VirtualBox and VMware. Workstation Player are both free and are the standard starting point for running virtual machines on your own computer. Operating systems to practice on. A Windows Server virtual machine to learn domains, Active Directory, and DNS, the systems that run inside almost every midsize and large company. A Linux distribution like Ubuntu for general systems practice. Kali Linux specifically if your lane leans toward offensive security, since it comes preloaded with the standard tools. Networking fundamentals to actually touch, not just read about. Set up a small virtual network between 2 or 3 machines and practice how they discover and talk to each other. Understanding DNS, how a name like a website turns into an address a computer can use, is one of the single most valuable fundamentals in this entire field, technical or not. Project management tools. Even a free tool like Trello or a basic ticketing system teaches you to think in workflows, priorities, and status. The exact skill that separates someone who does tasks from someone who runs a project. Document everything you do in this lab. A short write-up of what you built and what broke is worth more on a resume than a certification with no story behind it because it proves you can actually do the thing. 9 lab projects that actually go on a resume. This isn't a hypothetical list. This is the exact set of builds in my own home lab in rough order of difficulty. Each one maps to a real job skill, and each one gives you a documented project to talk about in an interview. 1. Home Server and Domain Controller. A full Windows Server lab with Active Directory and group policy, simulating enterprise user and device management, access control, and administrative delegation. This is the single most transferable lab on the list. Almost every midsize company runs on it. 2. Virtualization and Sandbox Lab. A home VDI environment and sandbox using Hyper-V to test cybersecurity tools, malware behavior, and system configurations safely. Learn to break things without breaking anything real. 3. Ad blocking, DNS, Pi-hole. A network-wide DNS sinkhole blocking ads and malicious domains across the entire home network. Teaches DNS security and filtering in a way you can actually see working. 4. Network segmentation and VLAN design. A VLAN-based segmented network using ubiquity routers and access points with custom firewall rules. This is real network architecture, not a diagram in a textbook. 5. Containerization with Docker. Lightweight test environments for app deployment, network tool testing, and lab automation. Docker skill is now assumed in almost every infrastructure and DevOps conversation. 6. NAS and mini server builds. A NAS plus a small mini server, a Zima board or similar, for centralized storage, backups, and edge computing experiments. Teaches storage, redundancy, and backup strategy, the unglamorous skills that save companies. 7. VPN and remote access. A Tailscale, WireGuard-based VPN enabling secure remote access to servers, virtual labs, and endpoints. Remote access done correctly is a genuine security competency. 8. SIEAM monitoring. Wazoo. A Wazoo SIEAM deployed across endpoints to collect logs, monitor security events, and practice blue team analysis. This is the closest a home lab gets to real SOC work. 9. Blue team training. Let's defend. Hands-on incident response simulations and network traffic analysis to build genuine detection and SOC skills against realistic scenarios. 9 lab projects that go on a resume. Start with 1. Document it. Let the list build itself over a year. 9 lab projects that go on a resume. Nobody starts with all 9. Start with 1, document it using the Portfolio Project Documentation wheel from Part 8, and let the list build itself over a year. Automate your lab with N8N. Once you have a few of these running, add N8N, a free, self-hostable workflow automation tool. It's one of the highest leverage additions to any home lab because it turns a collection of separate projects into a connected system. Automate alerting. Pipe SIAM alerts into a Slack, Discord, or email notification instead of checking a dashboard manually. Automate reporting. Schedule a weekly summary of what your lab detected, exactly like a real security team produces for leadership. Automate the boring parts, backup checks, uptime monitoring, certificate expiration warnings, all the things that get forgotten until they break. Practice integration thinking. Wiring tools together is a genuine engineering skill, and it's the same instinct behind the AI literacy section in Part 6. Automation is also the clearest possible proof of the be more valuable than your title principle. Anyone can do a task. The person who automates the task and documents the time saved is speaking the language of the business. Certifications, a path, not a collection. Certifications open doors, but only when they're earned with purpose, tied to a role you're actually aiming for, not collected because they exist. Employers can tell the difference between someone who studied for a real reason and someone chasing letters after their name. The order that consistently works based on both the podcast guests and the current state of the field: ISC2, CC, certified in cybersecurity, if you want a free, genuinely entry-level starting point. It won't carry a resume by itself, but it costs nothing and proves you started. CompTIA, a Plus and Network Plus for general IT and networking fundamentals if you're coming in with no technical background at all. CompTIA Security Plus is the real front door into cybersecurity. This is the most commonly requested entry-level cybersecurity certification in the industry right now, and it's the one that shows up in the most job postings. From there, branch based on your lane. CYSA Plus if you're leaning defensive, and Analyst Track Pentest Plus if you're leaning offensive. Further out, CISSP, CISM, or CCSP for leadership and governance track roles. One thing, nobody tells beginners about the advanced certs. CISSP and CISM both require roughly 5 years of relevant paid work experience before you can be fully certified, not just before you should attempt them. You can sit the CISSP exam early and hold Associate of ISC2 status until you've earned the experience, but you cannot shortcut the clock. Plan them as a Year 5 goal, not a Year 1 goal. It's also worth being honest about a broken part of this industry. Surveys have found employers requesting certifications that require 5 or more years of experience for roles advertised as entry-level. If you see that, it's usually a badly written job posting, not a real bar. Apply anyway. Certification and lab roadmap. A path with purpose, not a collection. Pick certs tied to the role you actually want. Certification and lab roadmap. It is not recommended to try to collect every certification available. A smaller set of certifications tied clearly to the role you want, backed by real lab work and documented projects, will always beat a long list that doesn't add up to a clear direction. Creators and resources worth your time. You don't have to figure this out with silence in the background. These are the channels and shows I actually recommend, split by what they're good for. For technical skill, NetworkChuck, youtube.com/@NetworkChuck, the best beginner-friendly entry point for IT, networking, Linux, and cloud. If you're starting from zero, start here. David Bombal, youtube.com/@DavidBombal. Deep networking and cybersecurity content, plus a lot of honest career path interviews with people already in the field. John Hammond, youtube.com/@_John Hammond. Hands-on malware analysis, CTF walkthroughs, and offensive security. Go here once the fundamentals are in place. Darknet Diaries. Real stories of hacks, breaches, and the people behind them. It won't teach you a skill directly, but it teaches you how this industry actually thinks, which is its own kind of fluency. Try Hack Me and Let's Defend. Guided, structured labs when you want more direction than building everything from scratch. Let's Defend in particular is built around Blue Team incident response. For leadership and business thinking, Grant Cardone, youtube.com/@GrantCardone. Sales, obsession, and setting targets big enough to force action. Tony Robbins, youtube.com/@TonyRobbinsLive. Psychology, State Management, and Decision-Making Under Pressure. School of Hard Knocks, youtube.com/@the-School-of-Hard-Knocks. Street-level interviews about money, careers, and what people actually earn. Uncomfortable and useful. In memory of Dr. Eric Cole. Dr. Eric Cole, youtube.com/@DrericCole, passed away on May 19, 2026, at 56. He was a former CIA hacker, a presidential commissioner on cybersecurity, a Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and, for a lot of us, the person who made cybersecurity leadership make sense. His core message is the one this entire blueprint is built around. Security is a business problem, not just a technical one. He spent 30 years teaching people to translate technical risk into language executives could act on, which is exactly the communication and business layers of the career value stack. His channel and his books, including Cyber Crisis and Online Danger, are still up and still worth your time. If you want to understand how to think like a security executive rather than just work like a security technician, start with him. Which certification on the roadmap actually ties to a role you want versus one you'd just be collecting? Have you actually built anything in a home lab yet, or only watched videos about it? 05. Part 5. Level 2, Find Your Lane. The Wake Up X Curiosity Compass. Once you understand the landscape, the next question is, which part of it actually fits how you think? This is the tool I built after watching too many talented people burn out in roles that didn't match their natural disposition. It gives you one primary lane, not a hedge, because clarity moves you forward faster than nuance does. Fix. You want something broken to work again fast. Help desk, support, systems administration. Build. You'd rather construct something from nothing than inherit someone else's mess. Network architecture, infrastructure, engineering. Break. You're driven to find the weakness before anyone else does. Offensive security and research. Defend. You'd rather watch for the intrusion and catch it in the act. Security engineering. Blue team. Develop. You want to make the system do something new. Software, automation, applied AI. Translate. You're the person who can sit with lawyers, executives, and engineers and make sure everyone understands the same risk. GRC and compliance specifically. Find your lane. The Wake Up X Curiosity Compass. Find your lane, a diagnostic that actually resolves. Answer these 4 questions honestly. Each answer points somewhere. Whichever lane shows up most is your starting lane. 1. Something just broke and everyone's watching. What's your instinct? Get it working again as fast as possible. Fix. Figure out exactly why it broke before touching anything. Defend. Ask how someone could make this break on purpose. Break. 2. You've got a free weekend and no obligations. What are you building? A system, network, or setup that didn't exist before. Build. A script or app that automates something annoying. Develop. A cleaner process or document that gets everyone aligned. Translate. 3. Which room would you rather be in? Hands on a keyboard, deep in a technical problem, fix, build, break, or develop. In front of stakeholders, explaining risk in plain language, translate. Watching dashboards, hunting for something that's off, defend. 4. The tiebreaker. After a hard day, what do you want to be true? I fixed it. Fix, I built it. Build, I found the hole before anyone else did. Break, I caught the intrusion. Defend, I made something new. Develop, I made sure everyone understood the risk. Translate, if questions 1 through 3 point in different directions, question 4 wins. It's the one people answer with their gut instead of their resume. Your lane is a starting point, not a life sentence. Most careers move across 2 or 3 of these over time. Pick the one that fits you now, go deep enough to be genuinely good at it, and let the pivot panel below handle it if you picked wrong. Real insight from the podcast, 1 guest per lane. Fix, James Lansaw, help desk to CISSP. He started at the bottom of the ticket queue. Proof that entry-level support is a real professional foundation, not a waiting room. Build, Devin Prasad, network architect, chose disciplined, fundamentals first growth over the fastest paycheck. Break, Aaron Portnoy, security researcher, an offensive mindset built from adolescence into a full research career. Defend, Kathy Stevenson, Deputy CRSO track. From State Prison IT to the Deputy CISO track. Proof the door opens from places you'd never guess. Develop. Jorge Avila, founder, Paleo Tech, built a company from a non-traditional background using applied technical and AI skill. Translate. Gustavo Mastroianni, CISO, a governance and relationship-driven path to executive security leadership, including the moments that almost ended his career. Also on the show, Greg McCord, CISO and founder, Sana Talwar, AI Security, Anil Reddy, founder, ARK Strategies, and Larry Switzer, Ziggiz, among others. Every one of these is a full episode. This section is the summary. The podcast is where you hear exactly how they did it, in their own words, unscripted. The pivot panel. Picked a lane and it's not clicking? Use this to course correct instead of quitting the field entirely. Fix feels too repetitive. You may be a build person who hasn't had the chance to design anything yet. Build feels too slow. You may be a develop person who wants to see software ship faster than infrastructure allows. Break feels isolating. You may be a defend person who wants the same instincts applied to protection. Defend feels too reactive. You may be a break person better suited to hunting the problem than waiting for it. Develop feels disconnected from people. You may be a translate person who needs the business-facing side of the work. Translate feels too far from technical work. You may be a fix or build person who needs more hands-on time first. Guest directory. Connect with every guest. Every guest referenced in this library is a real person with a real story, worth following beyond these pages. Watch the full episode, connect on LinkedIn, say the podcast sent you. James Lansaw. Help desk to see ISSP linkedin.com/in/James Lansaw. U2.B/U9ZQNE8G8FU. Gustavo Mastroianni. CSO, Schools Insurance Authority, linkedin.com/in/Gustavo Mastroianni, U2.B/RXQIV7VWDNW. Mohana Balakrishnan, CISSP. CTO, Schools Insurance Authority, linkedin.com/in/Mohana-B-24012-016, U2.B/MZJDZRSF4KY. Devin Prasad. Network Architect, linkedin.com/in/Devin-987913555 U2.B/A-POUIZVP9IU. Aaron Portnoy. Chief Product Officer, MindGuard, linkedin.com/in/Aaron Portnoy U2.B/O-C8PQZXJHC4. Kathy Stevenson. Deputy CISO, track linkedin.com/in/Kathy Stevenson-6 B54A026 U2.B/PU3TAIAKJGS. Jorge Avila. Founder, Paleo Tech Group, linkedin.com/in/Jorge Avila PMP U2.B/Y CR7HIBR5V4. Greg McCord. CSO and founder, linkedin.com/in/Greg McCord U2.B/IGDTBVPQO-8. Sana Talwar. Product and AI Security, linkedin.com/in/Sana-Talwar U2.B/SNGIMUTG8VO. Anil Reddy. Founder, ARK Strategies, linkedin.com/in/Anil-Reddy-Kondakrindi-1933891 U2.B/IOI5IK_UEZA. Larry Switzer. Sales Leader, Ziggiz, linkedin.com/in/Larry-Switzer-2 40539 U2.B/F7B5JYFFUHS. Louis Kemp. CTO, ANUL Technologies, linkedin.com/in/Louis-Kemp-IV 24U2.B/OJ T3VDGDCCL. Kevin Bali. Guest speaker linkedin.com/in/Kevin Bali, u2.b/1 AXMIMSSAWO. Zankar Vaishnav. Guest speaker linkedin.com/in/zankarv2.b/1 AXMIMSSAWO. Jesse Tees. Guest speaker linkedin.com/in/Jesse-Tellys u2.b/1 AXMIMSSAWO. Harmanjot Singh. Guest speaker linkedin.com/in/Harmanjot Singh 7u2.b/1 AXMIMSSAWO. Solomon Lee. Guest speaker linkedin.com/in/Solomon-Lee-9 623-04-192 u2.b/1 AXMIMSSAWO. Ryan Doctor. IT Service and Incident Management linkedin.com/in/Ryan Doctor u2.b/TJ C2-SDFNJW. John Cuellar. CEO and co-founder, Cascade Clarity linkedin.com/in/Cuellar u2.b/T T2XKA1-JW. Michael Fierros. AspireByte linkedin.com/company/AspireByte@aspirebyte.card.co. Episode not yet released. The Next Generation. Isaka Sacramento's rising cohort. Decode calls out the next generation, Isaka Sacramento, as proof there's no single right background. Here's who they actually are in their own words. Irene Shaju, MIS in Business Analytics, Sac State. International transfer student, graduating spring, got into cybersecurity because she loves coding and because she sees AI as too big a shift to go unchecked. Her framing? Cybersecurity is the discipline that keeps a rapidly advancing technology on a leash while still being genuinely fun to work in. Harmanjot Singh, Computer Science, Sac State. Schooled in India for 15 years, returned to the US in 2020. Was torn between CS and MIS after his sophomore year. A mentor told him to stick with CS. The real turning point was discovering the CyberCourse Scholarship for Service, a federal program that pointed him straight at cybersecurity. Already Security Plus and ISC2 certified. Jared Holloway, Management Information Systems, Sac State. Senior, former foster youth. Resilience isn't a footnote in his story. It's the center of it. His first internship at Golden One gave him the foot in the door he needed. Post-graduation, he's aiming to bridge cybersecurity and project management. Still figuring it out loud. Zankar Vaishnav, Management Information Systems, Sac State. Transfer student first year, joined Isaka his first semester, got pulled toward cybersecurity through a campus tech support job, shadowing managers doing defensive work behind the scenes. Calls cybersecurity a vast ocean. The scale of it is what drew him in, not what scared him off. Kevin Bali, Business Administration, Sac State. President, Isaka Student Chapter and MIS Association, deliberately combining MIS, Business Analytics, HR, AI Management, and a criminal justice minor toward one goal: digital forensics work that makes communities safer. His sharpest line: if it's not the people you work with that you enjoy, then it's for nothing. Solomon Lee, Computer Science, Sac State. From Chicago, graduating this December. Pivoted from software engineering into cyber after winning a scholarship. Pushes back on generic "don't follow your passion" advice. His point is, you won't sustain the grind on a job you don't actually want. Currently building a SIEAM lab on Azure from zero prior cloud experience. Jesse Ties, Software Engineering Cybersecurity. Drawn from architecture and systems design into security, what pulled him toward cyber was fascination with how components interact, which led straight to supply chain security, how automating system building creates vulnerabilities with effects that cascade across every connected system. Which lane did the curiosity compass point you toward, and does it match what you expected? If you picked wrong, which pivot fits you better? '06, Part 6, Level 3, Cross-Training. Specialists get hired, cross-trained people get promoted. Whatever lane you picked, don't stop there. Being a specialist gets you a job. Cross-training gets you the better offers, the promotions, and the mobility to move between roles when the market shifts. It's also the single best protection against being replaced. Someone with real breadth across 5 areas is far harder to lay off than someone who only does one narrow thing well. Networking fundamentals. Understanding how data moves makes you more useful in every adjacent role, even if you never take a networking job. Hardware fundamentals. Knowing what's physically happening under the software builds a troubleshooting instinct. Pure software people often lack. Programming fundamentals. You don't need to be a developer. You need enough to automate your own work and understand what you're asking a developer to build. Risk, vulnerability, and compliance basics. Even a build or develop person becomes far more valuable once they understand how their work gets audited and regulated. AI literacy. Learn to use it, verify its output, and never paste anything sensitive into it. Leverage, not a crutch. AI literacy in practice. Every level in this field now touches AI in some form, so treat it as its own cross-training area, not an afterthought. Use it to accelerate study, not replace it. Ask it to quiz you on security plus objectives, explain a concept 3 different ways, or generate practice scenarios. Never let it be the only source you learn a concept from. Use it to draft, then verify. A first-pass resume bullet, a first-pass incident report, a first-pass script, all reasonable. Submitting any of it without checking the details yourself is not. Never paste sensitive data into a public tool. Client information, credentials, proprietary code, and real vulnerability details don't belong in a prompt box you don't control. Learn basic prompt structure. Being specific about role, context, format, and constraints gets dramatically better output than a vague one-line ask, and this skill itself is becoming a hiring differentiator. Use it as a translator. Ask it to turn a technical finding into a 1-paragraph, non-technical summary for a stakeholder. This is one of the fastest ways to practice the communication layer of the career value stack. 2 candidates apply for the same mid-level security analyst role. One only knows security tools. The other can read a network diagram, explain a vulnerability to a non-technical executive, and write a basic script to automate a report. The hiring manager picks the second one every time, not because the first candidate lacks skill, but because the second one already speaks 3 departments' language. Outside your main lane, which of the 5 cross-training areas are you weakest in right now? What's one small step you could take on that area this month? '07, Part 7, Land the Role. Applying, interviewing, and following up like it matters. Skills get you qualified. This part of the process is what actually gets you hired, and it's the part almost nobody teaches. The TRACK application system. Most applications fail before the resume is even read because the system behind them was weak. Run every serious application through 5 steps in this order. Tailor. Match the resume and cover message to this exact role, not a generic version sent everywhere. Mirror the language in the job posting itself. Research. Know the team, the product, and something recent about the company before you go any further. This is what makes Step 3 possible. Approach. Message someone actually on the team, not just a recruiter with a short and specific note. Do this before you apply, so your name is already familiar when the application lands. Even a brief reply is worth more than a cold submission. Contribute the application, submit through the official channel, and reference the conversation from Step 3 if you had one. A referral, when you can get one, moves you past the resume pile entirely. Keep following up. 1 follow-up after the interview within 24 hours. 1 more if you hear nothing by the timeline they gave you. Then let it go and put the energy into the next one. The TRACK application system. The TRACK application system. Most people only do the submit step, then wonder why a strong resume gets no response. The other 4 are what separate an application from a candidacy. The order matters. Research feeds the approach, and the approach is what makes the application land warm instead of cold. Telling your story with the STAR method. Whether it's an interview question or a LinkedIn post, structure your examples the same way every time. Situation, what was going on. Task, what you were responsible for. Action, what you specifically did. Result, what changed because of it, ideally with a number attached. Vague answers lose to specific ones every time, even when the underlying work was similar. The follow-up, nobody does. After an interview, send a short, specific thank you within 24 hours, referencing one real detail from the conversation, not a generic template. If you haven't heard back in the time frame they gave you, one polite follow-up email is expected, not pushy. Silence doesn't read as respectful, it usually just reads as forgettable. The VALUE conversation, for negotiating and for selling yourself. This applies whether you're negotiating an offer, pitching a client, or making the case for a promotion. Validate the other person's position or need first before making your own case. Ask questions before you pitch anything so you actually know what they care about. Listen for what they say matters most, then speak directly to that. Underscore your value with specifics, not adjectives. A number beats an opinion. Engage them in the next step directly. Don't leave the next move ambiguous. What hiring managers are actually looking for. Employers consistently say the same thing in different words. They can teach a specific tool, but they can't easily teach curiosity, communication, or reliability. What actually stands out? Documenting your own projects, explaining your thinking clearly, and showing evidence of solving a real problem, even a small one, beats one more certification on a resume. If you're on the hiring side yourself one day, vet technical claims directly instead of trusting a recommendation alone. Set clear expectations and terms in writing before day one, every time. Hire for complementary skills on a team, not 5 people who are all good at the exact same thing. Everything is negotiable. Almost nobody treats negotiation as a life skill. Most people file it under salary conversation or car dealership and leave it there. In reality, it shows up everywhere. In relationships, in business, in real estate, in IT and cybersecurity contracts, even in how you navigate faith and family expectations. The only real exception is a shelf price at a retail store. Almost every other interaction has more room in it than people assume, and the people who do best in business and in life are usually the ones who never stopped testing where that room was. This is one of the biggest key topics in this whole book, not because negotiation is complicated, but because almost nobody is taught to see it everywhere it actually applies. If you want to go deeper than this book can cover, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss and Getting to Yes by Fisher and Ury are 2 of the most respected, widely recommended starting points, one from a former FBI hostage negotiator, one from the Harvard Negotiation Project. Both show up constantly on best negotiation books lists for a reason. Does your resume tell one clear story with the STAR method, or is it still a list of duties? When did you last follow up after an interview or application, and did you actually do it? 08. Part 8. Level 4. The Multiplier Skills. What makes a specialist irreplaceable? Cross-training builds your foundation. This is what makes you genuinely rare on top of it. The ability to sell, communicate, and translate technical work into business language. A fixed person becomes rare once they can also sell and communicate clearly. A build person becomes rare once they can translate their architecture to a non-technical executive. A developed person becomes rare once they can explain in dollars and hours why their automation matters. This is the layer that decides whether you stay a good technical hire your whole career or get pulled into the room where decisions get made. Be more valuable than your title. Your job title is the floor, not the ceiling. I currently work as a desktop engineer, but that title doesn't cover project management, solution engineering, cross-team communication, executive meetings, or leadership work, and I do all of it anyway, because I took the initiative to learn alongside the network team, the cybersecurity team, the infrastructure team, and the applications team instead of staying inside my own lane. A specialist in a single narrow position is the easiest person to replace. Someone who's built real foundations across many areas, even without formal authority over any of them, is much harder to let go. Case study. The communication hub nobody else built. I work inside a large enterprise spread across multiple cities and states where sites had no way to communicate with each other. Everything ran through disconnected phone calls with no shared structure. Nobody else had bridged that gap, so I built the bridge myself. One connection point per site, welcoming every location to join until it grew into a real standing communication network across the whole organization. Nobody assigned me that project. I saw a structural problem that mattered to the business and solved it without being asked, which is exactly the kind of initiative that gets remembered at review time. Case study: building structure where there was none. At another point, I walked into a site with no real organization, just phone calls with no system behind them. There was a ticketing tool, but it wasn't being used as one. I introduced staff members to each other, ran real meetings, and worked directly with CEOs and stakeholders to build an actual structured process out of the chaos. That's the same instinct as the communication hub. Find the gap nobody's addressing and become the person who closes it. The reputation loop. Make your value visible. Doing great work quietly is not a strategy. Treat your own career the way a business treats its 5-star reviews. Ask for feedback directly, right after you've done something well, while it's still fresh for the other person. Route that feedback to the people who matter: your supervisor, your manager, leadership, not just to yourself. Genuine praise from someone you helped, sent directly to your chain of command, carries far more weight than you describing your own work. Document every success as you go: the project, the approval, the email from leadership confirming it. Anyone can claim they did good work. Very few people can actually prove it with a paper trail. That proof is what separates you in a review, a promotion case, or a future interview. Think of it as a two-way exchange. Help someone genuinely, and they often become a future reference for you, the same way you may become one for them. The reputation loop. Make your value impossible to overlook. The reputation loop. The portfolio project documentation wheel. The reputation loop tells you to document your work. Here's exactly what a documented project should capture every time, so it's ready to become a resume line, an interview story, or a case for a raise without any scrambling later. The problem: what was broken, missing, or inefficient, in plain language. The constraint: what made it hard? Time, budget, politics, missing information. The action: what you specifically did step by step in your own words. The result: what changed, ideally with a number, time saved, incidents reduced, dollars protected. The proof: the email, the approval, the screenshot, the metric, whatever makes it verifiable. 5 minutes after finishing any real project, fill in those 5 lines somewhere you'll actually find again. A year from now, "I think I fixed something like that once," turns into a fully formed star story in under a minute. Try this. Pick one thing you built or fixed recently. Explain it in 2 sentences to someone with zero technical background, focused entirely on what it means for them. Time saved, risk reduced, money protected. If you can't yet, that's your next skill to build, not a failure. Are you more valuable than your current title suggests, and can you prove it on paper? Who have you helped recently that you could ask for feedback, routed to the right person? O9, Part 9, Level 5. Think like an owner. Business sense every technical person needs, even if you never start a company. You don't need to run a business to think like the person who does. Every one of these lessons came out of real business ownership, and everyone applies whether you're an employee, a contractor, or a founder. Partner with your opposite, not your mirror. If someone would just duplicate a skill set you already have, hire them. Don't make them a co-founder. Complementary skills are what make a partnership work. This is the exact lesson from the cell phone repair business I described in Part 3. Interview a business partner the way you'd vet a hire. I've had bad business partners for the same reason I had a bad hire: trusting a referral or a good feeling instead of actually checking. Now, before I partner with anyone, I sit down and ask directly what their goals are, what they think the mission is, and where they see this going. If you wouldn't hand someone a role on your team without testing their claims first, don't hand them half your business on a handshake either. Customer service and reliability are a real competitive advantage. Anyone can learn the technical skill. Fewer people treat every client or coworker like a person instead of a transaction. Even in a support or help desk role, exceptional service is one of the fastest, most repeatable ways to stand out, and it costs nothing but attention. Almost everything is negotiable. except retail. If you're talking directly to a business owner or stakeholder, there's usually room to negotiate. A shelf price at a store is the one exception. There's more on this in the negotiation section ahead. Get it in writing every time. I once turned down a $1 million offer. The number alone should have made it the easiest yes of my life. But the other side, including their own lawyer, wouldn't put a single thing in a signed contract. They wanted a verbal agreement, funded with my own money going in first. Walking away from that felt reckless in the moment, not smart. That kind of money doesn't come around twice, and everything in me wanted to find a way to make the verbal version work. I said no anyway, because a verbal agreement protects no one, no matter how friendly the room feels while you're in it. It stung for a long time afterward, wondering what that deal could have become. It only turned into a lesson later, once I saw how many people I know who did sign something that wasn't real and lost far more than a missed opportunity. Whether the deal in front of you is worth $100 or $1 million, the rule doesn't change. VetSkill claims yourself. My first hire came through a good friend's recommendation, and he sounded sharp and technical in the interview, enough that I didn't push much further than that. What the business actually needed at that point wasn't more technical depth, it was someone who could sit across from a customer and represent us well. I found that out the hard way, after the fact, because I hadn't set clear expectations or payment terms in writing going in either. That mismatch cost real time and real money before I admitted what had gone wrong. A friend's word is not a substitute for testing the claim yourself, no matter how much you trust the person making the introduction. Separate personal and business finances from day one, even for a side hustle. Never go into business with family. Use a favor-based arrangement instead if you want to help a family member professionally. Money and blood mixed badly enough times that this is close to a hard rule. Build a real team as early as you can. A solo operator hits a ceiling fast. Everything gets easier once there's a team, even a small one that you trust. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's the tuition. I've failed in business more times than I can count, more than 100, maybe more than 500. What matters is what you extract from it. Business and money books worth your time. Rich Dad, Poor Dad, The Millionaire Next Door, The Psychology of Money, for how to actually think about money, not just make it. Traction and the Advantage, for running a team or a company with real structure. Good to Great, for the difference between a good business and a lasting one. The Total Money Makeover, for getting personal finances in order before scaling anything. Employed or independent? Run the real numbers. At some point, almost everyone in this field wonders whether to go independent. Here's the honest comparison with real data instead of hype. What the employed path pays? U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics puts the median for information security analysts at $124,910, 2024. Predictable, with benefits, retirement matching, and paid leave attached. What the independent path pays? This is where the numbers get noisy, so treat any single figure with suspicion. Cybersecurity consultant averages differ hugely by source, roughly $112,000, Indeed, $132,000, ZipRecruiter, $157,000, Glassdoor, same job title, 3 very different pictures. Freelance cybersecurity specialists commonly bill $90 to $170 per hour, with senior specialists going higher. Independent contractor cybersecurity roles average around $133,000, with the middle of the market between roughly $111,000 and $150,000. The trap nobody warns you about. Take an hourly rate, multiply by 2,080 hours, and you get a number that feels life-changing. It's fiction. Industry benchmark data consistently shows independent consultants actually bill somewhere between 900 and 1,200 hours a year, roughly 150 to 220 billable days. Use 1,000 hours as a conservative planning figure. The missing hours don't vanish. They go into writing proposals that get no reply, chasing invoices, doing your own admin and taxes, business development, professional development, and the dead gaps between contracts. The honest formula. Before you quit anything, calculate your target take-home income plus the cost of replacing what employment gave you, health insurance, retirement contributions, paid time off, and real business overhead, liability insurance, accounting, software, legal, and self-employment taxes, then divide by 1,000 billable hours, not 2,080. That result is your floor rate, not your asking price, your floor. Below it, You are subsidizing your client out of your own pocket. Someone earning $125,000 as an employee sees consultants billing $150 an hour and does the math. $150 times 2,080 equals $312,000. They quit. In year one, they bill 850 hours because half their time went to finding work. That's $127,500 gross, minus roughly $12,000 in health insurance, minus self-employment tax, minus software and insurance and accounting. They cleared less than they made as an employee, with none of the security. The rate was never the problem. The billable hours assumption was, what actually makes the independent path work? The same things this whole blueprint has been building toward. A pipeline that comes from the connection flywheel, proof from the portfolio documentation wheel, and the ability to sell and translate value from the multiplier skills. Going independent doesn't replace those skills. It's the exam for them. 10. Part 10. Staying in the game. What getting fired taught me about rights, HR, and never being a victim of it again. Before any of this became a business, it was a string of odd jobs and not a graceful one. I got fired more than once. I got laid off. I quit jobs where I was doing real work and getting overworked for it with nothing back. At IT jobs and in restaurants both. Places that had no real interest in what I actually brought to them. I took contract work and gig work on purpose instead of chasing something full-time because I needed to keep building experience even while everything else around me stayed unstable. There was one firing in particular that changed the direction of everything. I told myself right then that I would never again be dependent on someone else's decision to hand me an opportunity. I wasn't going to be a victim of it. I was going to figure it out myself and build my own way instead of waiting for someone to give me one. That decision is the actual starting point of the Wake Up X solutions, more than any business plan was. It's also where my understanding of employee rights, HR, and compliance actually comes from, not a course. Getting overworked and undervalued enough times that I went and learned exactly what I was and wasn't owed and what a company can and can't do. Everything in this section comes out of that. Growth, promotions, and layoffs. Breaking in is the beginning, not the finish line. Tech and cybersecurity have both been through real layoff waves, so staying valuable once you're in matters just as much as getting in. Performance reviews aren't a formality. Walk in with your own documentation ready. Projects completed, feedback received, measurable results. Don't rely on your manager to remember everything you did all year. Asking for a raise or a promotion is a business case, not a favor. Bring the specific value you've added, ideally in dollars, time saved, or risk reduced, and connect it directly to what the next level of responsibility requires. If a layoff happens, breadth is what protects you next time. The multiplier skills and cross-training in this blueprint aren't just for getting hired. They're what makes you the harder person to cut when a company reduces headcount, because you're never doing just one replaceable thing. Keep your documentation and network current even when things feel stable. The worst time to start building your reputation in your contact list is after you've already lost the role. The best time was the whole time you had it. Build a personal board of directors. No real executive makes every decision alone. Build your own small, informal board, 3 to 5 people who fill different roles. A technical mentor, further along in your specific lane, who can sanity check skill decisions. A business mentor who understands career and compensation strategy beyond just the technical path. A peer at roughly your level who you trade honest feedback with regularly. Someone outside the field entirely who keeps you grounded and reminds you why any of this matters beyond the job. You don't need permission to form this board. Most people never ask anyone to formally join. They just consistently go to the same few people, and the relationship becomes real through repetition. A round of layoffs hits a mid-sized company. 2 employees with similar tenure are affected. One only ever did the specific tasks in their job description, quietly and competently, for 4 years. The others spent that same time cross-training into adjacent skills, documenting their wins, and staying visible in a local professional chapter. The first person spends 5 months searching cold. The second has 3 warm conversations lined up within a week, because the network and the documented track record were both already built before they needed either one. If you lost your role tomorrow, how many warm conversations could you start within a week? Who's currently on your personal board of directors even informally. 11. Part 11. Level 6. Think like an executive. Leadership starts before the title. Ownership, accountability, and sound judgment are behaviors you can practice at your current level, regardless of title. Title tends to follow the behavior, not the other way around. Ownership over your work and its outcomes, not just your assigned tasks. Accountability when something goes wrong, before anyone asks. Emotional intelligence in how you deliver hard news. Coaching and mentoring the person one step behind you. Delegation, trusting others with real responsibility instead of holding on to everything. Strategic thinking, connecting today's task to the larger goal it serves. Never let your current title determine your future potential. Efrain L. Salazar. Leadership books worth building a shelf around. Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink and Leif Babin on accountability that starts with you. Always Dare to Lead, Brené Brown on the emotional intelligence side of leading people. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Stephen Covey, still one of the most complete frameworks for personal and professional judgment. The Score Takes Care of Itself, Bill Walsh, on standards over shortcuts. The Executive Dashboard. Executives track a handful of numbers that tell them, at a glance, whether things are actually healthy. Build your own personal version. What moved this month that you can point to directly? What's at risk if nothing changes in the next quarter? Who you helped and whether they know it was you? What you learned that you didn't know 90 days ago. 4 honest answers to those 4 questions, checked monthly, will tell you more about your real trajectory than a job title ever will. The Wake Up X Decision Filter. Executives aren't distinguished by having all the answers. They're distinguished by having a repeatable way to decide under pressure with incomplete information. Run any significant decision through these 5 questions before you commit. Impact. What actually changes if I make this decision and for whom? Reversibility. Can this be undone if it's wrong, or is this a one-way door? Data. Am I deciding on real information or on assumption and urgency? Stakeholders. Who else is affected, and have I actually asked them, not just informed them? Timing. Does this decision need to happen now, or does urgency just feel that way? The Wake Up X Decision Filter. Run any significant decision through all 5 gates before you commit. One-way door plus real impact plus thin data equals slowdown. Reversible plus low impact equals move fast. A one-way door decision with real impact and thin data deserves more time than pressure will make you feel like you have. A reversible, low-impact decision deserves speed, not a committee. You're offered a partnership on a project that could double your income, but the other side won't put anything in writing and wants to move on a handshake by end of week. Run it through the filter. High impact, low reversibility once your own money or reputation is in, thin data on their intentions, real stakeholders, your own business or family, who haven't weighed in, and urgency that's coming from them, not from the facts. That's not a hard decision once you slow down enough to actually look at it. Think of a recent decision you rushed. Which of the 5 filter questions would have slowed you down in the right way? Where in your current role are you already leading, regardless of title? 12. Part 12. The Quarterly Review. Give your strategy a real deadline. Businesses review performance every quarter. Most people never do that for their own career and then wonder why nothing's moved in 2 years. Set a real time frame, 3 to 6 months for any goal. A job search, a certification, a promotion, a business idea. If there's no measurable movement in that window, that's your signal to reassess the strategy, not to grind harder at the same approach. Ask yourself every quarter, what actually moved in the last 3 months and what didn't? Is the lack of movement a sign I need to work harder or a sign my approach is wrong? What would I do differently if I were starting this goal today, knowing what I know now? Am I treating my finances, education, and soft skills with the same seriousness a business treats its own numbers? Your career health score. Rate yourself honestly, 1 to 5 on each of the 5 areas below, every quarter. Track the trend, not just the snapshot. Skill growth. Did you learn something new and provable this quarter? Network strength. Did you add or deepen real relationships this quarter? Documentation. Is your portfolio and resume current with your most recent wins? Financial position. Are you saving or at least aware of where the money goes? Energy and sustainability. Are you building this at a pace you can actually keep up for years? A low score in one area for one quarter isn't a crisis. The same low score 3 quarters running is the signal this whole framework exists to catch. What's your honest career health score right now, area by area? What's the one number you'd be most embarrassed to say out loud and why? 13. Part 13. Real voices, real rooms. Why this isn't theory. Every framework in this blueprint exists because I tested it against real conversations with real people who actually did each part of this path. The Curiosity Compass alone represents 6 full episodes worth of career histories. This blueprint is the summary. The podcast is where you hear the whole story in their own words, including the parts that didn't go as planned. If you want to hear how a help desk technician actually became a CISSP, how a security researcher's curiosity started well before it had a paycheck attached, or how a governance-minded professional worked their way to CISO, those conversations are already recorded and waiting for you. New episodes go up regularly, and every one of them gets run through the same lens as this book. What actually worked, not what sounds good in theory. Build your network in person, not just online. Everything in this blueprint gets easier once you're in a room with real people doing the work. Local chapters are one of the most underused resources in this entire field, and most of them welcome newcomers on purpose. IISACA and ISC, 2 local chapters for governance, risk, compliance, and general security community in nearly every major metro area. PMI, Project Management Institute chapters, valuable even for technical people, since project management is one of the multiplier skills from Part 8. Larger national events, RSA Conference and DFCon among them, where the density of people and conversations in a few days can outpace months of networking online. The Connection Flywheel. Networking that works isn't a series of one-off asks. It's a loop that compounds. Show up, same chapter, same event, more than once. Consistency is what makes you recognizable. Give first. Answer a question, make an introduction, share a resource before you need anything back. Stay visible. Post what you're learning. Comment genuinely on what others share. Get known. After enough turns of the loop, people start associating your name with your lane. Get referred. Referrals are the natural output of being known, not a separate thing you have to chase. The Connection. Flywheel. Momentum compounds. Each turn makes the next one easier. I partner with Isaka Sacramento myself, and it's one of the clearest examples I have of this flywheel in action. Showing up consistently to a local chapter turned into real relationships, mentorships, and opportunities that no cold application ever could have produced. Find the chapter or event nearest you, show up more than once, and let the relationships compound. Which guest story from this blueprint felt closest to your own situation, and why? What's one local chapter or event near you that you've been meaning to actually attend? 14. Part 14. Take your next step. You have the mindset, the map, and the moves. Curiosity gets you in the door. Cross-training and multiplier skills make you valuable. Business understanding creates impact. Leadership opens opportunities. None of it requires a traditional path, a degree, or connections you don't already have. Stay connected to the rest of this movement. Subscribe to Wake Up X on YouTube, youtube.com/@efren.wakeupx. Follow on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/EfrenLZalazar. Listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Explore the full library at wakeupxpodcast.com. Have a story that belongs on the show? wakeupxpodcast.com/guest. I'd genuinely like to hear your story too. Add me on LinkedIn and let's talk. This blueprint only works if it turns into a conversation, not a one-way download. I finally know what to do. I have a plan, and I'm not doing this alone. What every reader should feel. Welcome to the movement. Glossary. Plain language definitions for every term in this blueprint. A plus, Network Plus, Security Plus. CompTIA's entry-level certifications, in that order, for general IT, networking, and cybersecurity fundamentals. Active Directory, AD. Microsoft system for managing users, computers, and permissions across a network. Foundational knowledge for almost any IT or security role. Blue Team, the defensive side of cybersecurity, monitoring, detecting, and responding to threats. Red Team/offensive security, the attacking side, finding weaknesses before real attackers do, with permission. CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, the most senior security leadership role in most organizations. CISSP, CISM, CCSP, Advanced Experience Required Certifications for Security Leadership, Management, and Cloud Security, respectively. Cloud, AWS, Azure, GCP, the major providers of on-demand computing infrastructure that most modern companies run on instead of, or alongside, their own physical servers. CYSA Plus, Pentest Plus, CompTIA's mid-level certifications for defensive analysis and offensive testing, the natural next step after Security Plus. DNS, Domain Name System, the system that translates a website name into the address a computer actually uses to find it, one of the most foundational networking concepts in this field. DevOps, the practice of combining software development and IT operations, usually with heavy automation, to ship and run software faster and more reliably. GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance, the lane that bridges technical security work with legal, regulatory, and business requirements. Home Lab, a personal setup, often just virtual machines on your own computer, used to practice real skills, hands-on. Kali Linux, a Linux distribution preloaded with offensive security tools, standard for anyone practicing penetration testing. N8N, a free self-hostable workflow automation tool. In a home lab, it connects your separate projects into one system, alerting, reporting, and scheduled checks. NIST ISO 27001, widely used governance and security frameworks that GRC professionals work with regularly. Pi-hole, a network-wide DNS sinkhole that blocks ads and malicious domains for every device on a network. A common and genuinely useful first home lab project. SIEAM, Security Information and Event Management, a tool that collects and analyzes security data across a network, central to most Blue Team work. Wazoo is a free open-source option well-suited to a home lab. Tailscale/WireGuard, a modern, simple way to build a secure private network for remote access to your own servers and labs. VLAN, Virtual LAN, a way of splitting one physical network into separate isolated segments so a compromised device can't reach everything else. STAR method, situation, task, action, result, the structure for telling any professional story clearly. TRACK, tailor, research, apply, connect, keep following up. This blueprint system for actually landing a role. VALUE, validate, ask, listen, _engage. This blueprint's framework for negotiating and selling yourself. Vulnerability, a weakness in a system that could be exploited. Finding and fixing these is the core of most security work. 0 day, a vulnerability that's being exploited before the vendor has had a chance to fix it. Among the most serious findings in the field. Quick reference, every framework in one place. Bookmark this section. Once you've read the full blueprint once, this is the page to come back to. The 6-level path: entry, fit, breadth, differentiation, ownership, executive thinking, the overall map, the career value stack, curiosity, technology, communication, business and sales, leadership. What's actually being built at every level? The curiosity compass: fix, build, break, defend, develop, translate. Find your primary lane. The TRACK application system: tailor, research, apply, connect, keep following up. How to actually get hired. The STAR method: situation, task, action, result. How to tell any professional story. The VALUE conversation: validate, ask, listen, _engage. How to negotiate or sell yourself. The reputation loop: do great work, ask for feedback, route it to leadership, document the proof. The portfolio project documentation wheel: problem, constraint, action, result, proof. Document every real project. The Wake Up X decision filter: impact, reversibility, data, stakeholders, timing. How to decide under pressure. The career health score: skill growth, network strength, documentation, financial position, energy. Rate yourself every quarter. The connection. Flywheel. Show up, give first, stay visible, get known, get referred. How real networking compounds. The personal board of directors. A technical mentor, a business mentor, a peer, and someone outside the field entirely. The executive dashboard. What moved? What's at risk? Who you helped? What you learned? Track it monthly. Every one of these is meant to be remixed into your own version, not copied exactly. That's the whole philosophy behind this blueprint. This blueprint is free, and it's meant to be shared. If it gave you a clearer map than the one you started with, the best next step is simple. Follow along and pass it to one person who needs it. Your story belongs on Wake Up X. If Decode gave you a map, you already have something worth sharing. The Wake Up X podcast puts real, unpolished career and business stories in front of people who need to hear them, and every guest so far started exactly where you are now. You might be a fit if you broke into tech, cybersecurity, or business without the traditional path. Built something. A lab, a business, a portfolio, a community. And can talk about how. Have a failure or turning point you're willing to tell straight, not polished. Are mentoring, leading, or building something worth other people knowing about. How to apply. Share your story at wakeupxpodcast.com/guest or connect directly on linkedin.com/in/F. and mention Decode. Continue the journey. Every book leads somewhere else. Decode is one part of a 12-book system. If it helped, the next step is one page away. Take whichever layer matches where you're standing. The library. Layer 1, the story. I just have to wake up. Why any of this exists. Layer 2, the mindset. Comfort is expensive, the real cost of playing it safe. Layer 3, the blueprint. Decode, the Wake Up, X, Playbook, Zero Experience to Executive Thinking, Book 0. Layer 4, the playbooks. 1, break in. 2, build it. 3, think like a cybersecurity professional. 4, business first. 5, lead without a title. 6, AI for IT and cybersecurity. 7, build your brand. 8, the consultant mindset. 9, level up. Find us everywhere. Podcast and free library, wakeupxpodcast.com. Spotify, open.spotify.com/show/2 8GZNRBRIV2EFHOHZDIFTL. Apple Podcasts, podcasts.apple.com/US/podcast/ID 179282163. YouTube, youtube.com/@Efren.wakeupx. LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/EfrenElSalazar. Substack, substack.com/@wakeupxefren. In good company. ISACA Sacramento, ISC2 Sacramento, The Cell Phone Fix, ANUL Technologies, AISOC, AspireByte, and PodGrabber, the partners and collaborators building alongside the movement. See the full list at wakeupxpodcast.com/community.html. Get Decode free, apply to be a guest, or read the story behind the movement. All of it starts at wakeupxpodcast.com. Wake Up X Solutions. Efren L. Salazar, founder, host, cybersecurity professional, educator, community builder. Stay connected. Podcast and Blueprint Library, wakeupxpodcast.com, LinkedIn, linkedin.com/in/EfrenElSalazar, YouTube, youtube.com/@Efren.wakeupx. Be a guest. wakeupxpodcast.com/guest.